Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a 31-year-old vegan singer-songwriter, and in this video, I'm going to talk about how it seems completely impossible to actually pull yourself up by the bootstraps and start living a good life, especially if you're already in poverty and you're in some type of addiction, or if you have multiple addictions. So I'm going to talk about my experience, how I was able to get out, but really the reason I was able to get out is not my own doing. I mean, a huge part of it is because I chose to take the help that I could, and it's always your choice. No one can help you get out unless you really want to get out. But I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. I could have done it on my own, and I've done it on my own before, but it's really, really, really hard. And the second time it happened to me, because I've been through it a couple times where I was homeless, and then I got multiple jobs, and then I got out, but even then I had help. But I would have been able to do it without the help. It would have just taken another couple months of working super hard. But then I got my life together, I started to build a foundation, then it crumbled again, and then I became homeless again, and then I fell even harder. And then my parents offered me to move back in with them, and here I am living at my parents' house, and my life is back together again. I'm sober, I'm saving money. But if I didn't have my parents, there are times where, I might be dead right now. I would very likely still be homeless on the streets. I would very likely still have the addictions that I had. And so, to me, at times, it seemed virtually impossible to get out. Being that I didn't want to move away to other locations because I want to stay here close to my son. So it might have been easier for me to move away to some other location and look for another job somewhere else at a place where housing was cheaper, or just to look for more opportunities elsewhere if I wasn't a parent. So it's even harder if you're a parent and you're trying to actually be there for your kid. That makes the opportunities less. That's just a fact. But it doesn't make it impossible, no matter how impossible it seemed. And so I was there working a full-time job, sometimes 2 or 3, not all full-time, like 1 full-time and then 2 part-time, but still, I was working a lot, and it seemed impossible to be able to pay enough for rent, enough for food, enough for my car payment, for child support. And then on top of that, whenever you start to have car problems, then I don't know how I would see my son on those weekends if I didn't have help from a now ex-girlfriend, but a girlfriend who was really nice to actually help me out and drive and pick up my son whenever I started having car problems. And all the car, like, I've been through multiple cars. The last car I had, which I was paying payments for, was one that I actually spent my own money towards. But every other car I've had, just about, my parents have helped me get. Either it was a hand-me-down car, an older car that they were done with, or I think either just once or twice, I'm pretty sure just once, they actually helped me buy a flat-out car for like $3,000 or something. So, but whenever I was going through this phase of poverty and addiction, I was drinking a lot and smoking weed and nicotine. there's no way I would have been able to afford a car at times if my parents didn't give me their hand-me-down car. And then I just don't know how else I would have been able to be there for my son, or even be there for myself, if my parents weren't there to help me. Unless I actually turned my life around, completely gave up all the substances like I did now. Now I'm completely sober. And then just worked the 2 jobs and stayed very adamant on keeping those jobs and just working all the time. Very little time to myself. Although, I mean, 1 full-time job would have been enough, really, if just enough, just barely enough, if I wasn't buying all the substances. So that's really where the main problem was me buying all the weed and alcohol and nicotine consistently, and that would set me back. But whenever I was in that state of mind, or in that spot, I know how hard it is to choose to get out of it. And it seems impossible. It really does. It seems like a mountain too big to climb. It's like looking up at a mountain that's like a 90-degree angle at times. And I know there have been times where I've been like, you know what, I'm doing it. And I just forgot everything, and I was sober, and I was working multiple jobs, and I was somehow able to climb up that mountain like Spider-Man. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. But then I got burnt out, and I relapsed, and I went back into substance abuse, and I fell down the mountain, and I fell down into a deeper crevice. And many times it feels like this world's set up for us to fail. It's like a lot of these things, these jobs, the rent, the cultural norms, everything, it's set up to where you're just barely making enough money, or just barely not making enough money. There's weed everywhere, there's alcohol everywhere, everyone I knew drank, and temptation everywhere. It was completely stressful at my job all day, and which was the only way out is to work at that job where it's stressful. And to do it either full-time or overtime, or to get a second job. And it seems impossible, but I knew that the only thing holding me back, really, like, if this was the only way, I had to do it. And whenever I was really forced to do it, then I would just change my state of mind, and then I would be like, all right, this is it, I'm doing it. And it was just like a switch, and then I just did it. So maybe in a way, if my parents weren't helping me, then I would have learned to do this much faster on my own, just because I was forced to learn to do it. Because, I mean, my parents didn't always help me. It wasn't always a handout. They only helped me whenever they saw I was really struggling and they thought I really needed it. But time and time again, I would call them and be like, I'm behind on rent, I'm behind on rent, I'm behind on rent. I would do it over and over again because I was behind on rent every single time, and it was hard to do. I mean, like I said, I've done it before where I quit all the substances and I was completely sober and I worked multiple jobs, but it's like, to do that and consistently do that, it is difficult to do. Or maybe it's all in my mind. Like, I know it's all in your head type of thing is kind of true, but even knowing that, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to just change my state of mind like that and just consistently do that all the time. even though I really wanted to do that. You know, I want to be a good father and be there for my son. I want to be a good son and not have to constantly rely on my parents up into my late 20s. Now I'm 31 years old. And I just want to be a responsible adult and human being. I've had that desire. I've strived to do that. But it really is hard. Like it's hard being out there, and whenever you have addictions. And the other thing that made it harder is my desire to succeed in music, and to not live a mediocre life and just give in to working at a full-time job that I don't want to be working at. And that desire helped ruin me even further, because I would quit these jobs to be a full-time musician, and then I would reduce my hours so I could go and street perform or put more time towards music. And that might have worked out more if I was actually a little bit more strict or focused whenever I put my time towards music, because I know most of the times that I quit my job or I reduced my hours, at least in the last stretch before I moved in with my parents' house, like that last year or two, most of those times I was not utilizing my time all that well. I was not consistently uploading on YouTube. I was not writing much new material. In fact, I was smoking weed, I was drinking, I was using all these substances and just not actually growing and not actually doing what needed to be done to grow. And so it might have worked out better if I wasn't using substances, if I wasn't addicted, and if I utilized my time every single hour, every single minute. So whenever I did reduce my hours, I was using it to upload consistently, to actually get out there and street perform for hours and hours. I know I tried that. That was the main thing I did, was street performing. But even that, eventually I got burnt out, and I just wasn't doing it as much, or, you know, as much as I should, if what I wanted to happen was success and more financial freedom. And I was spending more time just going to a practice space, PDM, and just drinking and smoking and just playing songs indoors, practicing them, rather than even making a video or going downtown and street performing and getting paid for it at least. Or maybe looking for actual gigs to where I would get paid to play, and maybe learning cover songs so I could play at those gigs. That was something I've been stubborn about, and I'm still not sure if I understand why I didn't go that route, because what I want to do is be an original artist and create YouTube videos that fund my Patreon, and then I get ad revenue and sponsorships, and then I can support myself with that, and then I don't have to worry about gigs paying my bills, but I'll still get gigs, but then I don't have to worry about learning cover songs to get gigs, because I don't want to have to learn cover songs. Like, my passion is in original songs. And so if I'm gonna play a gig, I'd rather play a house show for a fan who watches my YouTube channel, who wants me to come perform at their house, or I'd rather play at a vegan event like at Project Animal Freedom. I've been playing at their events for years now, and I'm actually grateful that they pay me now. So I'm getting paid to play and perform at vegan events, and that has been my vision, and that's why I never focused on learning cover songs so I could just play the traditional gig, because that's not where my passion's at. But that's also what's made my progress and success so slow, and why it was so much harder back then, before I moved in with my parents' house, to make money as a musician. Because there were times whenever I was a full-time musician, or I reduced my hours to put more time towards music. And of course, I could have played traditional gigs and gotten paid for them if I would have learned some cover songs. But I was stubborn, and I was like, no, I'm just going to focus all my time and energy and music on original songs in this vegan niche. Because I knew that in the long run, if I just got good at creating vegan music and being ZmanTheVegan, the vegan superhero stage persona that I have for music, that I would be able to perform at vegan events, and I would be able to perform at subscribers' houses and house shows and events like that, which I would much rather perform at, where I would be able to play my own original songs and get paid for it. But I also knew that I might have been cutting myself off. So at times I did learn some cover songs recently, and I applied them to my set, because I know that that's just, in general, I might have been making an excuse to not grow as an artist and as a person by not learning cover songs. And there were times where in the past where I put a little bit of energy, and I was with a band where I would learn a little bit of a cover song, because I knew that might be the best thing to do if we want gigs. But overall, even inside the band I was in, overall what we did was original songs, and that's mainly where my focus has always been, like 99% of the time. And so that's made it even harder at times to pull myself up by the bootstraps, and it's made it seem even more impossible to make a living whenever I'm so conflicted. I don't want to stay at this full-time job. So even if I go through periods of working full-time, working overtime, eventually I get burnt out, and then I feel like, oh, I'm not putting enough time towards my music, because I just can't leave that behind. I can't leave the idea of being a successful musician behind and just work, even if it means that I'll be stuck in poverty and stuck eating unhealthy food all the time. And eating healthy seems pretty expensive. Like eating a bunch of fresh fruits and vegetables and the healthiest plant-based foods that I can consistently is far more expensive than me just buying bread and hummus and even like processed foods like vegan chicken patty or just tofu. I mean, for the longest time I would spend like $20-$40 a week on groceries, except whenever I had my son. Whenever I had my son, I would actually buy more food for him. But I was surviving off of the minimalist approach for groceries, and it was very cheap, $20-$40 a week, if even that. And that's not even the cheapest it could have been. That was to add some flavor, because I would buy vegan mayonnaise and hummus and just a bunch of bread, nutritional yeast, hummus, tofu, and then sometimes some vegetables like broccoli or lettuce. And it was hard. Like I can't even put it into words how hard it is to go from there, from being hundreds to thousands of dollars in debt, behind on rent, behind on child support, behind on car payment. Your car's breaking down. It's barely running, or it's not running at all sometimes. And then the food bank sometimes didn't even have barely any vegan options. Like there would be dried fruit and maybe like one canned vegetable. Like very rarely they had canned beans. So, although sometimes it was a good week. Sometimes they would have like Beyond Meat patties or like canned beans and vegetables and fresh produce and stuff like that, and like I felt like I would eat better that week. But even then, just in general, whenever you're struggling, you're in debt, you have no car, and then you're not able to get the food you need, then it's almost impossible. It's like, how are you supposed to get the food you need, to have the energy you need, to work the hours to get out of this? And especially if you don't have a car, then you have to walk. Like, sometimes I didn't even have the energy to walk to the food bank. I had to somehow find a shopping cart or something to push there. Or like one or two times I remember I didn't have a shopping cart, and I had to carry all that food back. And to carry all that food back, and this is whenever I was living in a hotel, to the hotel room for that tiny little refrigerator where half of the food's gonna go bad, although a lot of it didn't need to be refrigerated, but still, it was like carrying all that food back was so very taxing, and I barely had the energy to walk there without carrying the food. And then on top of that, the food that I got, it wasn't always the most satiating, or it just wasn't the most well-balanced meal. So again, I'll reiterate, it seems impossible whenever I don't even have the food to give myself the nutrients, to work the hours, to actually start saving up the money to fix the car, to have a place to stay. But then again, if I'm really honest with myself and I actually take responsibility, I'd realize that I wouldn't have been in that position if I wouldn't have made those poor choices. If I would have just kept my full-time job from the start, if I would have not started getting addicted to these substances, if I would have stayed sober, kept my full-time job, I wouldn't have had that problem. I would have been able to save money. Right now, I would probably have a house by now. I would have a house, and if I would have been more disciplined and determined and consistent with uploading and growing as an artist, I probably would be having more paid gigs now. I'd probably have more patrons. I'd probably have more subscribers. I'd have like 10,000 subscribers, honestly. If I'm really honest with myself, I have to say it's my fault that I'm not there. The only reason why it was this hard was it's mainly my fault. Sure, the system is set up for failure, and it is set up to make you fail and to tempt you and to put you in debt and to keep you in debt. And these jobs just barely pay enough for you to get by and all that stuff. But at the same time, I know that from the start, if I would have just been adamant and disciplined, not gotten addicted, stayed at the full-time job, not ever quit it to try to pursue music, then I likely would have my life completely together by now. Although, looking back, I must say, I don't think I would have all the life experience and character that I built. Like, I know there were times where I took those leaps of faith and it was a crazy thing to do, but it was like, I did it and I faced that fear. Like, I hitchhiked to New York from Missouri in winter weather. And in order for me to do that, I had to face that fear. I'd quit my job, and that's a scary thing to do, in order to do music for a living. And I went homeless for it. And I stayed adamant, and I kept working on it. And I kept working on it, and I kept working on it. And so the fact that I did go through that has made me the person that I am today. It's put me in the position that I am today, which is living at my parents' house at the age of 31. But I have all the life experience that I have. And a huge part of me would not take that back. A huge part of me would not take back the huge leaps of faith that I've taken that have strengthened my courage, that have strengthened my character. All of the hard, rainy days of sleeping in the rain, being homeless, all the hard days of barely having enough to eat, but still getting by, still having the grit and courage to keep going. Of course, a huge part of that is because it's all I've ever known, and maybe I was too scared to give up on the dream. Rather than saying, oh, I had the courage to keep pursuing the dream, maybe the right thing to say is I was too scared to give up and just say, all right, I need to go back to a day job. Like, part of that is true. But still, at the same time, it would have been so much easier for me to just give up on the dream and just stay in the full-time job. And I've had that choice again and again and again, and every single time I've chosen to stay full head on, going towards the music that inspires and changes the world, inspires people to make better choices, more conscious choices. And that has been my decision, my theme every single time. Every single time I go through these very hard periods in life, I stay consistent, and I always choose that. So yes, it was all my fault, and I might have been able to even get my own house and even have some success in music if I would have made different choices. But the choices I made have already been made, and I have to live with them. And I wouldn't take a lot of them back, because again, they've made me who I am today. And a lot of the time, whenever I made those choices, it was a gut feeling, it was from the heart, and I really felt like I was doing what's right. I really felt like I was going after my dreams, and I was building it from the dirt up, from the bottom up. And sure, I haven't gotten that far to this day, materialistically, but the skills I've built, almost 1,000 videos I made, and I started uploading consistently. As soon as I came back to my parents' house, that desire is still there, strong. Sure, I went through a long period of being homeless and barely uploading and barely actually making any growth or progress forward. But as soon as I came back, like, the dreams, the roots of the dream are so deep inside of me that I went through another cycle of working hard. And here I am now. I have these skills. I have the songwriting skills. I have more of a vision of what I want to do for the future, and I'm even more invested into the process. I have almost 200 songs on Spotify, and sure, I may still not be the most talented singer or guitar player, and my voice might be off-putting to most people, but I've come a long way, and I can't even imagine what another 10 years of this, where I'll be at. I'm pretty sure, just by the math of it, if I just stay consistent, then in 10 more years I will be successful in music. But with all that being said, it really does seem impossible to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Especially if you have all these dreams and you're quitting jobs to do it, if you're addicted to substances and you're just working a full-time minimum wage job that barely pays enough to get by. It seems impossible, but it's not impossible. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without my parents unless I quit all my substances and went about it that way, of being completely sober and working 2 jobs. But even then, I'm not sure if I would have been able to do it, because like I said, at times it's like you aren't able to get the food you need to work, to have the energy to work the hours you need to get out of it. But still, I know if I really needed to, I would have. And I don't want to make the excuse and say that it's the society's fault or anything else's fault. And sometimes, I mean, that's life. Like sometimes you just might die. It's not a giver. It's not a given that you will survive tomorrow. It's not a given that you will be here. No one is entitled to that. And it's more powerful to take responsibility and to say, you know what, it all is my fault. And if anyone could have changed it, it could have been me, no one else. But I also don't want to get full of myself and say, oh, I got myself out of homelessness because it was my parents who let me come stay at their place. And if I would have gotten myself out all by myself, it would have taken me years. I'd probably still be homeless now, struggling. Hopefully by now I would have quit substances, but very likely I would still be using them, because it's much harder to quit the substances whenever you're surrounded by it daily and you don't have a strong foundation like I do here that's isolated away from everything. And so I'm very grateful to have this. And if you're struggling and you don't have a home to stay at or this foundation that I have, I feel your pain. I know it is hard. And I can't even imagine for a lot of you what it is like not having enough to eat, not having the opportunities, and then being addicted to substances. Or even if you're not addicted to substances, it's still hard. But it's not impossible. And if you really want to get out, I know the best way is to take responsibility and to change your state of mind. But I know how hard that is. And at times it seems impossible. And that you don't want to hear that. And even hearing that doesn't make it better. It doesn't automatically just make you do it. It's like logically knowing that isn't going to help you do it. And I know it's super hard. But I believe in you. And you got this, no matter what you're going through. I know you can do this. Thank you for watching. For the animals! Woo!